In today's video, we'll explore transformative insights from the glucose goddess method by Jessie Inchauspe, a French biochemist and best-selling author. Recently, Jessie appeared on Stephen Bartlett podcast, The Diary of a CEO, where she shared essential hacks to reduce glucose spikes. Those simple yet powerful tips will help you boost your energy and improve your overall health. Let's get started.
So the first hack we talked about was the savory breakfast. There was a second one you talked about, vinegar.
It's to drink 1 tablespoon of vinegar in a big glass of water before your biggest meal of the day. So vinegar contains acetic acid, which interacts with your digestive enzymes and cuts the glucose spike of your meal by up to 30% with no effort.
What kind of vinegar?
The kitchen vinegar, 1 tablespoon in a big glass of water, dilute it, drink it 10 minutes before having your dinner, see how you feel.
Okay, so that's hack number 2, and that's really to sort of line my stomach to...
So, no, that's to interact with your digestive enzymes.
Okay.
The lined stomach is the third hack.
Which is?
Veggie starters. So all around the world, if you look at different cultures, you see this habit, this tradition of starting your meal with veggies. In Italy, antipasti. In France, crudité, raw vegetables at the beginning of your meal. In the Middle East, you start your meals with herbs by the bunch, right? Why are we doing this veggies first thing? Well, recently scientists have discovered why it's so powerful. It's because veggies contain fiber. When you have fiber at the beginning of a meal, what it does is that it coats your intestine. It makes this sort of protective barrier, this protective mesh, kind of gooey, fibrous mesh. And so any glucose you eat afterwards will not be able to go through your intestine into your bloodstream so quickly. So it slows down the arrival of glucose into your blood, and it slows down that spike.
And the fourth one you mentioned was moving after you've eaten.
Yeah. So after eating, use your body and your muscles for 10 minutes. So that's the 4 hacks. Savory breakfast, vinegar once a day, veggie starter once a day. You can also combine those two and do like a vinegar dressing on a veggie starter, and then moving after eating. And then when you want to get pro, you go to all my other hacks.
People talk about being in a food coma after they've eaten.
Yeah. Food coma is like a combination of brain fog and fatigue, right?
And what's going on there?
Well, I think there's a lot of things going on, but one study that's really interesting shows us that in rats, when you create lots of big glucose spikes and when you monitor the activity of their neurons in the rats, scientists noticed that the more glucose spikes they had, the slower the speed of the signal between their neurons. So their brain was literally slowing down. The information was going more slowly throughout the brain, and they theorized that in humans, this could lead to brain fog. So you have glucose spikes linked to brain fog, and your mitochondria becoming exhausted from big glucose spikes, potentially making you really tired, 90 minutes after eating. With the hacks, food coma reduced significantly, so you can actually do stuff after eating instead of just lying down and not being able to get up.
And you took these hacks and you did an experiment, right? On page 7 of your book, The Glucose Goddess Method, you talk about this 2,700 person pilot experiment that you did in 2019.
Yeah.
Which of the hacks did you use for this experiment and what did you find?
So it was these 4 hacks. So it was a 4-week experiment. Week 1, you start your savory breakfast every day. You do that for the 4 weeks. Week 2, you add in vinegar once a day. You continue for the rest of the 3 weeks. Week 3, you add veggie starters. And week 4, you add moving after eating. You don't have to change anything else about what you're eating. I'm not cutting out sugar. I'm not telling you to not drink alcohol. I'm not telling you to not drink pasta. I'm just asking you to add these 4 hacks in and see what happens.
And these people were from 110 countries, between the ages of 20 and 70 years old. Mm-hmm. And what happened?
Listen, the results were really stunning. So 90% of people reduced their cravings. 90% of people had more energy. You had really significant impacts on sleep, on hormones, on skin, on mood, on diabetes. These numbers are pretty remarkable.
And there's going to be people screaming because they want to know the other sort of 6. There's 10, right?
Yeah, I can go through all of them if you want.
Yeah, if you say what the other 6 are.
Of course. So another hack is eating your food in the right order. Now, if you eat a meal in the right order, meaning veggies first, then proteins and fats, then starches and sugars, instead of the opposite, you reduce the glucose spike of the meal by up to 75%. You're eating the same meal the same quantity, the same food, just the order and using that fiber first mentality is going to reduce your spike. So eating your food in the right order, okay? Having a savory breakfast, we talked about it. Veggies first, we talked about it. Vinegar, we talked about it. Moving after eating, we talked about it. And then there's close on carbs. So that means anytime you eat starches or sugars, which are the big category of carbs, make sure you're never eating them naked or on their own. Because if you eat them on their own, poof, they just turn into glucose really, really quickly. So instead of having a slice of bread on its own, have bread and some avocado. Add some fat to that. That's a good clothing to add. Or add some protein or add some fiber. If you're having a carrot cake, don't have it on its own. Have it with a Greek yogurt, for example. So that's close on carbs. It's really easy to remember, especially if you're going throughout your day and you can't really pick what you're eating because you don't have many options. Just think close on carbs. Then we have savory snacks. So during a day, if you want to have a snack between meals when your stomach is empty, try to have something savory that won't increase your glucose spikes instead of having something sweet. Then another hack that we kind of touched on is if you want to eat something sweet, have it as dessert instead of on an empty stomach. So if I want a cookie or a carrot cake, I will make sure to buy it in the morning if I know where I want to get it from, and then have it as dessert after my lunch or after my dinner. So I'm not removing any of the sugar from your life. I'm just showing you how and when to eat it, so it will reduce the glucose spike. And then we have always eat your fruit whole. Never juiced, never dried, never smoothied, only whole to have that protective fiber in there. It's just an illustration of existing studies. That's my role. That's my job. That's what I love to do, to translate studies that are existing in a way that makes it easier for people to understand. For example, grapes and cheese. So I'm French, and often when you eat like a big plateau of cheese, you'll have some grapes there to have with. And it, the glucose response shows us that if we had the grape on its own, it would be a bigger spike than the grape with the cheese. Not only is it really delicious, it's also better for your glucose levels because you're putting clothing on that sugary carb that is the piece of fruit. Or ham and melon, or rice and beans. All these traditional combinations cause smaller spikes than you would expect from the individual ingredients. That's really quite fascinating. So for example, if you have salad and then pasta, which is much better for your glucose levels than having pasta and then the salad. So interesting to see that if you have your veggies at the beginning of a meal, you have such a big impact on your glucose.
Yeah, because that's really easy to change as well.
Totally. You don't have to change what you're eating, how much you're eating. Just next time you're sat at a meal, think, oh, I'm going to have the veggies on my plate first. That's it.